Hey guys, and welcome back to Dark Matter Podcast. I'm Dominique.
And I'm Avalon.
And today we want to start diving deeper into more hard-hitting society topics. So what we're talking about today is something that's super important, and that's what's happening to the Uyghur population in China. And many of you may not have heard of this because it only recently has been getting global attention, despite the fact that this has been happening for years.
Right.
But more people definitely need to know about this because it's very similar to what's happening to the Jews during the Holocaust.
Yeah, it's best described as pretty much like another Holocaust, but like it's not being talked about, which is interesting because I feel like the Holocaust was kind of similar. Like at first people didn't like really know what was going on, or they were just kind of like, even people in Germany were like, it's probably not as bad as it really seems. But like obviously it was worse than it seems. So next we're going to get into who the Uyghurs even are, if you haven't heard of them. So the Uyghurs are Turkish-speaking Muslims that make up the majority of the population in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in northwest China. That's a mouthful. And they're one of China's 55 officially recognized ethnic minorities. And there's also Uyghur communities in countries near China, like Uzbekistan, is it Kyrgyzstan?
Kyrgyzstan, yeah.
That one's difficult. And Kazakhstan. So they're not just in China, but this is mostly happening in China. And there's also a population of about 3,000 Uyghurs living in Australia. So, again, they're in other places, but biggest concentration is China.
Right.
And like we mentioned, Xinjiang is an autonomous region. However, it has been under Chinese control since 1949, when the People's Republic of China was established, though some argue it should be independent of China. So that kind of reminds me of Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's very similar, I feel like.
Still, yeah, it's with China as well, and I feel like there's just a lot of, like, power struggles with China, like China wanting to own things, and people, and, like, the community's kind of wanting to be separate.
Right. Which is not a surprise because obviously China is a communist country.
Yeah.
There's like a dictatorship, you know.
Yeah, so it's just how it is there.
Right.
So Xinjiang is actually an important part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is a huge development plan that is supposed to spread throughout East Asia and Europe. And another thing to note is that Xinjiang is home to China's largest coal and natural gas reserves, which, of course, the Chinese government wants to control. Of course, it comes back to money.
Always.
Always trace it back to money. So they've encouraged more of Han Chinese to move to this area, I guess in an attempt to kind of, like, overtake it. Because, again, they want the money. And this ended up causing a lot of ethnic tensions, which resulted in some riots in which about 200 people were killed and hundreds of others were injured. And the Chinese government blamed this on extremist groups and justifies its treatment of the Uyghur population and other minorities by claiming that they're trying to eradicate extremism and separatist groups.
So basically they're saying like anyone who is against their plans or kind of goes against the Chinese government, which again is no surprise because they are like a dictatorship and communist.
Yeah, and I think it's well established at this point that in China, like, you don't really speak out against the government. You don't really have the right to do that as much as you would in, say, America, because of course, like,
there's no freedom of speech over there.
Yeah, like, of course we have like lots of qualms with America, but like we shit on America a lot and on the government, and we're not in jail. You know what I mean? So it's like in China, it's very different. Like, even what you search online is monitored, and it's limited what you can search and what you can see. So it's obviously just a very controlled environment.
Yeah, I feel like everyone here kind of jokes like the whole FBI meme, you know?
Yeah.
But that's an actual thing over there, okay? Like, it's not a joke. Like, people are actually monitoring you and watching you because that's just the kind of government it is. Yep. And China's current president, Xi Jinping, has actually taken a very aggressive approach towards Muslim minorities and especially the Uyghurs. And in 2019, reports came out that in the past couple years, the Chinese government has arbitrarily arrested and imprisoned Muslim minorities in Xinjiang, and most of them are Uyghurs. So, I mean, if you don't know what arbitrarily means, it just means that they basically arrested them for no reason or some kind of made-up reason. Basically, they're just want to detain them, and they will use an excuse to do it. And there's actually pictures that we found on the internet. Like, some of them were posted by The Guardian. Obviously, these aren't, like, I would say they're like surveillance pictures. I don't think like these were approved by the Chinese government at all.
For sure they weren't,
and they basically just show like how Uyghurs are being treated in these concentration camps and being taken to concentration camps. And Avalon, do you want to describe this first picture?
Yeah, so the first picture, the one we're looking at right now, is basically just like what looks like hundreds of men. Like, it's a lot of people, and they're all just like in exactly the same uniform. Like, think of like a janitor uniform, kind of like just like a jumpsuit, and they're all just sitting in like perfectly straight rows, and there's like a huge gate to their side, or a huge like fence to their side, that you couldn't really get over, like the way it's built. And yeah, so like people try to say that it's like not really, you know, a concentration camp, and it's just, what do they call it, education camps?
Like re-education camps.
Re-education camps aren't a thing.
That's not ever
not a thing we have here. Yeah, so like I don't understand when people try to make that claim that it's like, well, they're just like teaching them things, like, so they're like keeping grown adults in a camp
unwillingly. Yeah, so I mean,
them to work, like it's a concentration camp.
Right, like if you look at this picture, like we said, we'll have posted everything. If you're listening on Spotify, it'll be on our website and everything. If you are watching on YouTube, the picture will be on screen. But yeah, like she said, there's basically just rows and rows of men all sitting there in their jumpsuits. They're fenced in, and then even in the background you can see like soldiers basically making sure they're
around them.
Yeah, and then there's also a second picture, and I think this one was from The Guardian, and you can tell like it's obviously not very good quality because it's obviously being taken like secretly. But want to go ahead and tell us like what you see here?
Yeah, so like you said, it's like a little hard to see. Let me zoom in a little bit. But what I can like tell is that, so there's like, it looks like they're all men as well, and they're all like wearing the same thing. They have like some kind of vest on top of their clothes, and they all have their like hands tied behind them and their heads down. They're all sitting on the ground with like all in that same stance with the same thing on. So like heads down for the most part. Some people are looking up,
and they're blindfolded too.
Their eyes are covered, and there's just a whole mess of either soldiers or police, I don't know, like some kind of authority figures that are just like standing amongst them, and holding, like, I mean, I'm assuming making sure that they stay like that, because you don't just stand like that blindfolded because you want to learn, because you want to go to an education camp. Like, it's so crazy that people say this is like that it's not a concentration camp. Right.
And according to reports, about 1 million to 3 million Uyghurs have been detained in what, again, they're calling vocational training centers, but what there is essentially mass internment camps.
Yes.
And for most of them, most of the crime, like the only crime that they committed, like we mentioned before, was being Muslim, and they're being labeled as extremists just for practicing their religion. And at first, of course, the Chinese government, tried to deny that these camps even existed, of course, as they do. But now that there's, people have obviously seen proof this is like global news now they're just saying that these centers are just meant to teach people job skills, essentially. But I mean, like we've seen, obviously, they're not there of their own free will. However, according to several people who've escaped, while inside these centers, they are forced to pledge loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party and renounce Islam. And they're also made to praise communism and learn Mandarin. And they are under heavy surveillance. There are microphones and cameras watching their every move. People have even said they were tortured and deprived of sleep. And this is the worst thing ever, is that women were sexually abused, and some of them were forced to have abortions or have birth control implants, which is a blatant violation of human rights.
Right. They're trying to ethnically cleanse them. Like, they're literally just trying to wipe out the population by making sure they don't have kids, they don't reproduce.
Right. And again, this is part of the whole wanting to control the Xinjiang region, because obviously the highest population is Uyghurs, and I think the whole plan is to kind of, again, reduce their population and then kind of take over that region slowly.
Yeah, and I think that for sure it has to do with the region, but I think it also has to do with religion in general, because I remember taking a religious studies class and my professor saying that China specifically is really not about religion.
I think they're very secular.
Despite the religion, what religion it might be. I've heard even Buddhism, they don't want that to be perpetuated. They don't want any kind of beliefs in anything to be perpetuated, because they really just want allegiance to the state. You know what I mean? To communism and to China itself. And so I think that it just goes back to this bigger issue of them just wanting to eradicate religion, which you just can't do, but then this is a very especially egregious one, because it also involves race, because Uyghurs are considered an ethnicity, ethnic minority, and then also they're trying to get their land. So it's just like so many things going on at once.
Right. I mean, this obviously is the culmination of a lot of things. Like I said, like there's been racial tension for decades, the greed over money, as well as, you know, like the race thing and the religion thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the Uyghurs that don't live in the camps, that are outside of the camps, are subject to China's strict policies and surveillance, and this has been going on for decades. And many Uyghurs, both inside and outside the camps, are forced into manual labor and forced to make cheap products. The New York Times also reported that the face masks being sold to the U.S. came from Uyghur labor factories. And I don't know if we mentioned this, but there's like certain companies that are being like outed now that have association with, or that are using Uyghur labor,
right? And
basically slave labor.
Yeah, we get into that later too. But I mean, it is interesting to know, you know, all the face masks, and I guess that does make sense because obviously, when this pandemic first hit and we first went into lockdown, like we were very low on face masks and supplies like that. So obviously, that raises a question of, now that we have an abundance of supplies, where is it coming from and where are we getting it?
Yeah, exactly. And going on like to the other things that are happening there, so there's new evidence that's coming to light that China has been forcing sterilization on Uyghur women, as we kind of mentioned earlier, and reports say that official measures to control the Uyghur population in China is aiming to practically no population growth using the combined method of sterilization and long-term birth control measures. So in other words, they're literally like ethnically cleansing them. Like they're trying to make sure that their population is like basically dies down, because if you're not reproducing, then obviously your population is going to be affected. And I think that's like what we hear about more, is like that they're trying to stop the birth rate, but like in addition to stopping the birth rate, they're literally killing them, you know what I mean? Like not all of them, but a lot of them, they're like using them as cheap labor or free labor, and then for some of them they're killing them. So they're making sure that there's like a fast decline,
yes, absolutely,
in how many are around. And I don't know, I didn't see this mentioned also, but like this, I don't know how true this is, but I've also heard the ones that don't even live in the camps, the ones that are like outside, are, like we said, they're surveilled. But I've heard that like people from the Chinese government are forced, or they're forced to like house a person from the Chinese government in their house, like to have someone with them, and it's just like you can't object to it, obviously, and they're forced to like eat pork, drink alcohol, like you can't pray or anything because you have to renounce Islam, which is like.
Oh, so they're basically like forcing them to do this.
Yeah, wow. So even if you're not in the camp, like I don't know, I'm sure there's like some Uyghurs that don't have this going on, but like I've heard that like a lot, that even if you're not in the camp, that they have someone living with you to make sure you're like eating pork, you're drinking alcohol, or you're at least just not practicing Islam, which is crazy, because as a Muslim, it's like you can make me eat pork, you can make me drink alcohol, but like I know I'm still Muslim, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of weird to like, I don't really get that, because it's like you can make them do things that we're not supposed to do, but like you can't change someone's belief, you know, unless you brainwash them.
I feel like that is part of it. They are trying to brainwash them in the sense that they are trying to break down everything that they believe in. You know, that's obviously, again, they are not allowed to practice their beliefs. So I feel like, in a sense, they're going to get so tired of this with the heavy security and everything going on, like, that they are just going to be...
give up.
Yeah, like, give up and just...
I completely feel that. Yeah, like, at some point, it's like...
That's exactly what they're trying to do, because, again, they want very much to have them be loyal to the Chinese president and the Communist Party. So I feel like that is just another way to systematically break them down.
Yeah, because I think that definitely, like, strong governments see any kind of, like, religious or, like, any moral, like, compass at all, like, even whether it's religion or it's just, like, your beliefs, like, politically or whatever it might be. Like, if you have, like, a strong belief, I feel like they see that as a threat, because it's detracting from your allegiance to the country and your allegiance to the people in authority. So whether it's religion, like I said, or it's something else that you believe in, I think that very, like, controlling countries like China, they will benefit from getting rid of that, because then they have your, like, undying, you know, devotion just to them.
Yeah. And speaking of the sterilization and like the birth control measures they take, there was actually a report published by Dr. Adrian Zenz, who is one of the world's leading scholars on the Chinese government policies towards ethnic minorities. And this report actually shows like actual evidence of the human rights violations towards the Uyghur people. And like we said, we linked this on our website, and we definitely recommend if you give it a read if you want to check it out. It's about 20 pages, so we won't cover the whole thing, but we will go over some of his major findings. And one of those is that the growth rates fell by 84% in the two largest Uyghur communities between 2015 and 2018. So this was already happening like years before. Like it's already 2020 now. I can't imagine like what's happening, especially with like the pandemic and everything. So 84%, that is a lot in the two largest communities.
Yeah, that's literally like imagine like any country dropping, like the growth rate dropping by 84%. Like I think Japan is one of the few countries that's in decline right now because more people are dying than are being born as far as I know. But 84%, it's probably like a very small percent. You know what I mean? Like that, like, that tips it over to where they're going into decline. 84% is like just insane. Yeah.
I mean, so basically they are trying to eradicate them because again, not only are they stopping the birth rate, they're also like actively killing people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then there are also government documents that blatantly stated that birth control violations were punishable by extrajudicial internment in their training camps, which we mentioned. And that basically means if you refuse like the birth control methods, like some of them are forced to have implants again and abortions, stuff like that. And if you do resist that, then again that's something that you can be arrested for.
Yeah, basically just like making random shit illegal so that they can arrest them, which we've seen throughout history.
Absolutely. And then other documents from 2019 also revealed plans for mass female sterilizations targeting 14 to 34% of women who are married or of childbearing age. Again, targeting the obvious birth rate, and they're obviously trying to bring down the population. And it seems like they're doing a very fast job of it, too.
Yeah, seriously. I was shocked by the 84% number. Like, I mean, I think it's also something to consider that Uyghurs don't make a huge population, so it's, like, easier for them to just, like, bring down the numbers, because it's China, you know? Like, they have so much power, and they have so many resources that, like, if they want someone gone, they can get them gone.
Right,
so
and
that's why it's so important to talk about it.
Exactly, and there's, again, we were talking about it because no one in China can, like, they can exactly speak out for themselves. So I feel like it's up to us, like anyone in the world, honestly, to just put pressure on them and try to like expose what's actually happening. Yeah. And the last thing Dr. Zen says is that these findings basically provide the strongest evidence yet that Beijing's policies in Xinjiang meet one of the genocide criteria cited in the UN Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide, namely that of Section D of Article 2, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the targeted group. And I agree, like I would definitely say that this meets genocide. I mean, I feel like when you think genocide, you're actively thinking like, oh, like the war, like gas chambers, Jews, like marching them in. And again, we don't know if they are doing that. We don't know what they're doing to them inside these camps. We don't have any info for that. But they are stopping or preventing births, which I feel like does definitely fall into genocide because, you know, the implants actually conducting abortions definitely makes an impact. So I agree 100% that this is genocide, basically.
Yeah, that definitely is. I know that's very interesting that, like, you don't think of, like, stopping the population growth with genocide. You just think of, like, killing them actively.
Right.
But this is definitely genocide. And I think that it's, like, I mean, everything they're doing is to make sure that I was going to say breeding, like they're not having kids.
Right, like they basically want to eradicate their entire, like, ethnicity from...
Yeah, and, like, I think that, like, even one thing I thought about is, like, the pictures we see, like, the ones we've seen, they're all men. So I'm assuming they have women in internment camps, too, but they're just separate. Like, they're keeping them separate. So I literally feel like, first of all, that's prison. Yeah. That's literally prison. But secondly, they're making sure that, like, that they're monitoring them all the time and that they can't reproduce, because if men are over here and women are over here, obviously there's no babies being made, and the women who even aren't in the camps are being sterilized or being made to, like, imagine having an abortion forcefully. Like, I can't even imagine how traumatic that is, despite the actual population issue. Like, like, abortions are really, like, a very tough decision to make, and I know that it can be, like, really difficult for some women, but imagine that's forced on you, that you actually were pregnant and wanted to have a kid, and you are forced to have an abortion. That's happening a lot.
Traumatizing.
Like, oh, it's awful. I can't even imagine how bad that is. So, yeah, this is definitely a genocide. Like, I think, I just can't help but relate it to, or compare it to, the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, a lot of people just didn't realize how bad it was. Like, I think even the people in Germany, like, I think it was slightly different, because, like, I don't know if, like, I feel like in China, it's just, like, it's just assumed you're not going to speak out against the government, because it's, like, people go missing, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, like, you literally can't.
Yeah, you can't do it. So I feel like that's just, like, the culture over there. But in Germany, I feel like, I just feel like if people, first of all, they were made to not like the Jews by Hitler.
Right. Like, it was a totally different society there. And I feel like, the situation completely led to this. There were several factors that led to it. Yeah. But, I mean, again, like, this is different. There's not even, I mean, there is similarities in the sense that they definitely blackballed the Uyghurs, and they definitely tried to, like, discrimination against them. They definitely made them feel as if they're, like, second-class citizens. And I guess it's just so shocking to me, because I feel like oftentimes we look at events of the Holocaust and we think, my God, I can't believe, like, that this actually happened, and that the world let it happen. And it's just shocking, because here we are, like, years later, and I would think that would never happen again, and yet here we are. Like,
exactly, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that, like, I feel like back then, that's one similarity, is that people, even in Germany, like, just really wanted to turn a blind eye to it. I think they just didn't want to, acknowledge what was going on.
Or they didn't realize, like, how bad it was.
Yeah, I think for sure some people might have known, but, like, I really think people just didn't realize, and they probably knew that it was horrible, and they're like, I just don't even want to go down that road. Like, I just want to, like, pretend it's not happening.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's the same thing that's happening with Uyghurs, is that a lot of people are just like, well, it's, you know, like, they either don't know about it, or they just kind of are like, you know, like, we hear about things all the time, like, all these different things going on in the world, and, like, I understand we can't just, like, keep up with every single one of them, but, like, this is literally, like, the Holocaust happening again. It's just a different place and different time.
Absolutely.
And a different group, of course, but yeah, it's crazy that, like you said, to think that, you know,
this is happening right now.
Yeah, like, because if you ever gone to, like, the Museum of Tolerance, like the one in LA, or they have many Holocaust museums, like, literally everywhere in the world. If you've ever been to one, like, it's so humbling, and it's so shocking to be there and be like, how did this happen?
Right. The fact that,
how did we let this happen?
Exactly. And the fact that this is happening now, like, today in our current society, is, like, that's part of the reason why we want to speak out about it, obviously, because, I mean, I don't know how many people will be able to reach or how many people will see this, but I think, like, just every single person who can, you know, like, find out about the situation and try to help in some way does, you know, at least we're doing something.
Yeah, at least we're not letting it, like, because obviously, like, China is a giant. Like, they are, like, you can't just, like, take on China, you know what I mean? But the more we speak about it, the more, you know, things happen.
Right, and, like, the more global pressure, I feel like, it's put on them, which does matter, obviously, because there are several parts in play and very delicate, like, relationships, so, you know, that's something to consider.
Yeah, I think one thing to consider, especially with China, is the trade, the whole aspect of trade, because they're, like, the powerhouse, I feel like, of the world in terms of, like, creating things and, like, shipping them out.
Right, like, everything's made in China. Like,
literally everything is made in China. Yeah, like, even, like, the companies that are using Uyghur labor. Yeah, so there's so many, like, there's so much money involved in it that if we really put pressure on the companies and on the people in charge of, you know, of our country, in America, and other countries, especially countries that are nearby, I feel like eventually we can hopefully do something, because, like you said, this has been going on for years.
Right, and we're gonna get right into that.
Right, we wanted to get into what we can do to help stop this, because it's obviously very overwhelming, like, hearing this all at once, and it's like, oh my God, like, what can I do to help?
Right.
So far, it's already gotten the attention from U.S. lawmakers, and recently, President Trump himself signed the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act. But a lot of people are saying that it's not enough, and basically the U.S. should put their money where their mouth is and actually do something, because you can sign as many papers as you want, but China doesn't care. You know, I think that China's shown that many times, that, like, even going back to, like, Tiananmen Square, like, they don't give a shit. They don't care about their own people. They don't care about any, you know, and they're just going to do what they need to. Like, not Chinese people, by the way, the government, like, not the people, that's not what I mean at all. The government, doesn't care about its civilians, doesn't care about the Uyghurs, doesn't care about Trump signing a paper.
On Trump's side too, it's like it's very easy to just sign a paper and then like not do anything, you know,
like,
but obviously,
check the box.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, oh, like this will look very good for me and you know, like my party, so obviously I'm going to do it. But like if you just stop there, then obviously nothing is going to be done because like we said, China does not care. And one thing I actually found too in a CNN article is that John Bolton, which was his former security advisor, in his recent book actually accused Donald Trump of endorsing the idea last year of building the camps like over dinner with the Chinese president. So I mean, if that's true, which I mean probably is because he was a security advisor, that's obviously not a good thing. And then so him just signing this paper now, like, it's just basically nothing. It's just lip service. And that's part of the concern, too, I think, is that experts are saying, like, that this problem will just kind of just get swept up into his whole, like, party's, you know, like, political power play, you know, and that's all it'll ever be.
Right. I know. I can't help but think of when you mentioned that, of like when we talked about the Rwandan genocide, when the I can't think of the Hutus, they like signed the agreement, or no, it was the Tutsis. Now I forget which was which. But they were signing the peace agreement. They were saying like, yeah, we're gonna like stop fighting and everything, all the while knowing that they were planning on the genocide. Like they had that in the back of their mind, and they signed the paper and they're like, yeah, we have a peace agreement. And then of course, like a few weeks or whatever later, the genocide started. So it's like, I don't know who to trust. I really don't trust any politicians. But yeah, if, like you said, if John Bolton said that, like, I don't think he would come out with these wild accusations that could, like, damage, like, ruin the president's career. You know what I mean? For, like, based on nothing. I don't know. I just think that's something to consider, that, yeah, like, you can sign a paper, you can say that you support them or whatever, but, like, they need to take actual action.
What, at the end of the day, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. So Vox published an article about 5 things that the U.S. can actually do to help the Uyghur Muslims instead of signing a paper.
Right.
So the first thing was to build an international coalition to help the Uyghurs. Basically, a lot of experts are saying that the Trump campaign is just using this as a pawn for their political strategy, like you said, just to kind of like check the box, make sure like, you know, everything looks good, but not actually do anything. And to make sure it's actually legitimate, they should work with other countries and allies instead of just saying like, oh, we're doing our part. They should work with other countries because like together, united, we're so much stronger.
Right. And I feel like it holds them accountable. Like you actually have to do something now because people, like other countries, are watching you.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, kind of like I was mentioning earlier, is hurt them economically and stop supporting forced labor. So this goes back to fast fashion. We should do an episode on fast fashion. There's so many good reasons not to buy from fast fashion and just to buy from like thrift stores or locally sourced places, like ethically sourced places, which I know it can be like overwhelming and it's hard to figure out where to start. But one thing I've been doing recently is just not shopping as much, like just not buying things that I don't need because we tend to buy in excess in America. But that's more of a personal thing. In terms of the country generally, we need to stop, you know, getting our like buying things from China, like supporting their economy and supporting the forced labor if we want to see this end, you know, because as far as we perpetuate that and we keep supporting them, like we're America, we're like we buy like everything, you know what I mean? Like we're a huge part of the world economy.
Yeah, we're a power in and of ourselves, and if we actually wanted to do something, we could. So that again is the thing, like to actually do something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and another thing that they suggested was to keep the spotlight on the issue, and that basically means just using U.S. intelligence to actually gather info from these internment camps, because like we said, like they're obviously very heavily guarded. Like we don't know a lot of information. Some of the things that we did know were like leaked. They were never meant to actually come out. So they're basically saying that the U.S. does have all these intelligence agencies. They can actually try to do something and, you know, just basically gather more information and spread it. So again, that is one thing that they can do. And another is to oppose China at the UN, which I don't know how likely this is going to happen because already we've seen President Trump pulling away from the UN this year. So again, I don't know how likely that is to happen, but if he was to go to the UN or whoever, if America was, that is one thing that we could definitely do to support these, because like I said, we are a power in and of ourselves. So if we oppose them, then that does do something. And then, of course, the very last thing to do is just to support Uyghurs and their affiliated groups. We'll have several links on our website below, like we said. If you want to read up on the situation or if you want to sign any petitions and stuff like that, you can definitely do that. But yeah, now we're going to jump into like what you can personally do, because we kind of talked about like what we as a country can do, but you personally can still definitely do something.
Right, yeah. So it's not all on the like global level, because I know like there's certain things that are like with BLM, it felt very much more local, like, oh, I'll sign petitions, you can go to, like, protest. It felt like there was more to do, like, here and now. But with Uyghurs, when I first found out about this, when I found out more about it, at least,
it's like, how can you help?
Oh, my God, yeah. I was like, this is literally, first of all, it's, like, on the other side of the planet, and it's also just, like, it's China. Like, what are we even supposed to do? But there are things that we can do personally. So a few of those are, first of all, stop supporting the companies that sell from Uyghur labor camps. So a few of these... don't want to disappoint anyone, but a few of these include H&M, Adidas, and Coca-Cola. I think Nike is also involved, which...
Right, like there's more. Those are just a few of the... and unfortunately, and I know how hard this is. Trust me, I also like H&M and Adidas and stuff like that. I do drink Coke once in a while. So, I mean, I know it's hard, like... It might be very easy to say, like, I like these, like, I don't want to stop using them, but, like, we're not saying forever, we're just saying, like, for now, especially since, like we said, the pandemic is going on, like, most people are staying at home, or please at least try to stay at home. Hopefully everyone's staying at home, but, like we said, like, if you can, just try to stop, like, supporting these companies. It does work if you hinder them financially. Of course, their bottom line is money, so that's what they care about. And if they see people stop supporting them because of this, then I think that it would definitely make a difference.
Yeah, it definitely would. And like I said, like it's hard because like obviously like H&M, like they have so many things, like it's easy to just go there.
Things from H&M.
I own a lot of things from H&M. And Nike and Adidas are both involved. It's like where you're supposed to get like gym shoes or whatever. You know what I mean? Like those are two huge, like huge companies. Yeah. But it kind of comes down to like, and this is like, I'll get preachy for a second, but like it was something my dad said once to me is like think about it like big picture. Like at the end of your life, are you gonna look back and be like, well, I wish I bought more Nike shoes. Like I wish I got like those Adidas. Or are you gonna say like, I'm happy I did something to could contribute to a cause that really matters, like to potentially like liberate this group of people that are being oppressed and killed,
and again, like not to say like we can never support them again, because again, we were hoping that this will end someday, and that the whole point is like to make these companies stop using these. So like we're not saying never use them, we're just saying like try to be mindful of who you're purchasing from and where they get their supplies and products and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, you can sign and share the hashtag No Rights, No Games 2022 petition.
Which, I mean, I don't know if, like, obviously the whole stance on that, like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. But again, this is 2022, and if you were not aware, they did plan to host the Olympics in Beijing. So again, this petition is just to say, like, basically stop what you're doing to the Muslim minorities, or we're not going to have the Olympics in Beijing. So again, that's something that you can definitely do. Just sign it. It's very quick, stuff like that. And then also, if you are a student, you can sign the Statement by Concerned Scholars on China's Mass Detention of Turkic Minorities. That is another petition. And also just contact like your local representatives, your senators, stuff like that. Just write to them and tell them about that. I know like sometimes that's hard to do, but I'm sure, I'm sure like there's something to that online that someone has made that you can just copy and paste or something like that. Like we said, we will try to link like all this stuff because it is very important, and there is a lot of things that we can do.
Yeah, even though it might not feel like it, you do have power individually, and we need to exercise that.
So, but yeah, so that is it for today's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed listening, and we will be back next Monday with a brand new episode. And to make sure you don't miss any announcements, be sure to follow us on our Instagram at darkmatterpod and our Twitter at darkmatter_pod. And as always, all our sources and pictures are on our website, darkmatterpod.com.
Right, and if you're listening on Spotify, be sure to follow us, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it would be great if you left us a review. And also be sure to subscribe and like our video watching on YouTube. if you enjoyed watching, of course. And if you enjoyed our podcast, this episode or previous ones, we'd really appreciate it if you told your friends to give our podcast a listen. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week.